I'm Jake Truemper. I do YouTube and TikTok. My YouTube content is very different than my TikTok content. On TikTok, I make history content. On YouTube, I do like YouTuber review content.
What type of YouTube reviews?
So, I used to be in a band called it was a joke band. They're an actual band called Running in Place, but then we would do videos together called Running in Place with Jake, and we'd make videos about like huge YouTubers. And the YouTubers actually like responded to us, and it was super cool. And then the band got too busy, and I was like, well, I don't want to stop doing this. So I started just doing like I called it the quest for the greatest YouTuber ever, or the quest for the best. And it's honestly just I look at some of the best YouTubers out there and see what great ones there are. So that's kind of the main thing on my YouTube channel. I do a few history videos sprinkled in there every once in a while, but mostly it's the quest for the greatest YouTuber.
Cool. So I guess give me an idea about where you are in life right now. If that's a weird question, I know, but like, for the people watching, are you in college? What are you studying? Sort of, where do you see yourself in the future, I guess, also?
For me, right now, I guess I went to college twice, and then I dropped out both times. I was going to major in history and minor in political science. And because I found both really interesting. First time was community college, and I went, and I was like, after the first day, I dropped out, and the lady was like, "Is it too difficult for you? Because that's okay. Don't give up." And I was like, "Nah, man, it's not for me. This is just like high school again. I loved high school. I just don't want to relive it again for 4 years." And then I went to another school, and oh goodness, I'm just going to keep talking because the thing kind of glitched out there. I just kept talking. It glitched out there for a second. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Then I went to the University of Iowa, and I dropped out within the first week. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on me. And then I started working in a toothbrush factory at age 18. And that was weird. Third shift, toothbrush factory. And then I started working at a radio station part-time. Then I got a full-time job somehow out of the blue. Worked that third shift. And then I now work middays at a radio station in the Quad Cities. So in Iowa and Illinois. And I work that from like 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that's how much work I do right now. So usually get off work at 7, and then I go and record YouTube videos or TikToks.
Nice. What types of shows do you run there?
So we have a few different types of shows. We have we have 5 stations there. We have an ESPN station, we have a rock station, then we have kind of more throwback pop music station that's more throwbacks from like the 70s to 2000s, and then we have current pop music, which is the genre I'm in, and that's called B100. And then sometimes I'll do lives there and every once in a while on my TikToks, but it's a great job. My old radio job, good people. It was just not the best experience, but this job has just been phenomenal. It's been absolutely amazing.
So you want to continue doing radio? Do you see yourself sort of starting to make longer form history podcasts in the future that you want to eventually have broadcasted, or what's sort of the dream eventually, or is there really one?
So that's an interesting question because oddly enough, I feel like radio is actually the most reliable job I'm in right now because, like, you see it with TikTok, you see it with YouTube. I make money off of YouTube, but it's like pennies, right?
Yeah.
Radio is an amazing job, and that's like my livelihood, and I absolutely love it. And there's a way to do podcasts through it and everything. It's just we'd have to like be much more, I guess. So I work underneath like a big company, right? It's owned by Town Square Media. So obviously with the podcast, we'd have to work on it more. I couldn't just go up there and be like balls to the wall and do whatever I want. It'd be a little bit more controlled, which I'd definitely be fine with. And that's honestly, that'd be the best way to start a podcast if I wanted to, was through my company and then promote to others, because that's just a great start rather than me just being like, yeah, I'm going to put a new podcast up on my YouTube channel. Because I actually do that. I have the only TikTok podcast, which is fun and everything. But I feel like if I wanted to like really put my head down and do a podcast, it'd have to be like through the radio station, which sounds fun, but just a little bit more work.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess switching to TikTok then, because you were talking about the TikTok podcast. Do you think you have any idea about the fate of TikTok in the future?
Well, it's, to be honest, you could just get a VPN and you're set. You're right. TikTok, I don't think we'll ever see like the death of TikTok by the standards of Vine. Like Vine just straight up was like, we're done. The only way TikTok's doing that is if so many places ban it that it's just like, well, there's no money in this anymore. But we could be seeing in America, I don't think. I mean, for me right now, I'm like, it's a 50-50 shot. I see them having some difficulties getting it shut down at first. I don't think it's going to be like a lights off and it's done, but I think they could find some workarounds and just be like, it's dead. We're shutting it down, boys. And it's just one day we're just like, I don't think it's like one day it's gone. I think we'd have some warning, like a little bit more warning than we have right now. But after a while, like I could potentially just seeing it get shut down once people are a little less interested in it with this news.
I guess sort of two questions off of that. One, do you think it would stand up to a court challenge? You said you were interested in political science. And then also, do you think that most people would actually download a VPN and figure that out enough to use TikTok?
So it's interesting because a lot of government officials are saying they've been looking into it for quite some time. And then you've got the CEO TikTok has an American CEO who's saying that they have two databases where they store the information and none of them are in China. Legally, since it is stored in America, they don't technically have to send it over to China, but they still could. And that's what the government is worried about. The only thing is the government says they've been looking into it for quite some time, but they don't have enough evidence. All of this is very, right now, there's no actual concrete proof, and that's why we're not seeing TikTok get taken down right now, because you literally can't do anything just by being like, it's a hunch, unless we lived in a like authoritarian, like I'm not saying India's authoritarian, but India, like they have a border dispute with China as well, so they were probably like, this is a sketchy app, we're just getting rid of it. They can't really do that fully in America. There are some checks and balances that they have to go through. So if it is proven that TikTok is storing more data than they were telling us, even if it's only kept in America, then America could legally be like, we're shutting it down. Here's why. Technically, if they wanted to, America could probably just shut it down right now, but I'm glad that they're going through the channels of like doing it so it's not more government strongholding us and ripping us down. I guess I'll throw it to you as well. Do you think we'll be seeing the end of TikTok anytime soon?
I think the only way it probably shuts down is through public perception more than anything. I was reading an article, and there was a Supreme Court case a few years back that found that speech, or that code, is technically speech and falls under the First Amendment. So it would be unconstitutional, at least from that angle, to take it down. The other big thing is both Google and Apple are very hesitant ever to cooperate with the government. You know, even with Huawei and Xiaomi, they were hesitant to, remove Android support. And then also Apple, like, after the, I think, terrorist attack in California a few years back where someone had an iPhone, they refused to give backdoor access to the US government. So I think like the tech companies would be hesitant, and legally it wouldn't stand up to court challenge, but there is a way to take it down with public perception.
Yeah, honestly, that's their best bet, in my opinion, is getting the public behind it. Again, that way they don't even have to stronghold it and be like, well, it's not technically the First Amendment, even though it's legally the First Amendment, because it's not a fight to see for it now. It's just if you can convince the public, like right now there's the whole thing where they're like, a bunch of creepy older people are on it and they're taking advantage of your kids. Delete it now. If you can get the public on your side, then you're set. You can stronghold them on that one. And then with the VPN thing, that's my biggest fear is no, I do not think a large amount of people will be getting a VPN by any means. Like I'd get a VPN just to like see if I could like be successful somewhere else, but most of my people are in America, and I do not think little 14-year-old Timmy is gonna be getting a VPN anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Americans are just lazy.
Nope, that is 100%. When it comes to certain things, very, very lazy.
I mean, I'm not that much different, but like, you know,
Are you from Canada?
No, I'm from the U.S.
Oh, just wanted to make sure. That's hilarious. I thought maybe you were giving like a Canadian side point. You're like, yeah, Americans look pretty lazy, and I was like, oh. Interesting. I didn't realize. I was like, I thought you were from America from what the videos I've seen.
No,
I was like,
I'm
maybe I'm
from
wrong.
Oregon, so we're not.
What parts of
Portland.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to dox you either. I'm like, all right, what is also your social security number, your address?
Let me find that. Wait, where's my wallet? Give me a second. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but.
VPN is probably a no-go for many U.S. citizens.
What percentage would you say might download a VPN?
I think I saw somewhere, what is it right now that use a VPN? It's like 3% of Americans, or some incredibly low number that use like the most mainstream VPN. So if TikTok goes down, what, 5% of Americans, maybe if you combine every VPN or hidden location thing, probably max is like 20%, and that's like very, very generous idea.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people will also download a VPN and figure that they can't figure out how to use it and then just delete it.
Oh yeah, VPN is, from when I used it's very user-friendly once you get the hang of it, but I think just the concept of it is very scary. It sounds more difficult than it actually is.
Yep. No, they do a very bad job messaging.
I could not agree more. Like, my favorite YouTubers will talk about it, and I was like, I know what VPN is, but that just sounds scary and difficult. They gotta find like a different format for it, because if you want like kids to start using it, just the way they explain it, I'm like, that just sounds...
you want to be able to watch shows online from places that you aren't from? Although, legally, can they say that?
I don't see why they couldn't. I think technically, because a VPN is, let's see. No, legally a YouTuber could say that. They're like, hey, if you downloaded a VPN, you could watch shows from wherever you want. I use VPN and watch my shows wherever I want. Legally, you could tell someone to do that. Like, it's to say, yeah, you'd be fine. You'd be totally fine there. So they could legally say that if they wanted to.
I definitely need to start using my VPN to teleport to the UK so that I can watch some Studio Ghibli then.
What is Studio Ghibli? Also, just using a VPN in general is good because it's not just TikTok that takes your information. Literally everything you down, every app, every website, you sign an invisible contract saying, steal my data. So VPNs are important, very important. But what is that show?
So, oh boy, sorry. Some of the comments are just, no, Studio Ghibli.
Wait, what are the comments saying? I'm interested now.
Oh,
are they hateful or loving?
The word simp.
simp.
Yes.
I hated that word with a passion, and then now me and my girlfriend, we call each other simps all the time. Like, we'll literally be like, all right, I'm going to bed, I hope you have a great day, I love you, and it was like, fucking simp. And I'm like, dang it. So we just roast each other. Also, sorry if I cuss. I just realized I don't think I'm not allowed to cuss on your podcast.
No,
am I?
you
I'm so
definitely
sorry.
can. We have, I don't know, people cuss way more than I do, but it's fine. At least on TikTok. I mean, I cuss way more in real life. But, I don't know. What do you mean, the show? Oh, I don't have a podcast yet. Maybe I'll make it into, like, the Stitch Hour or something like that.
That'd be pretty cool. I guess I was talking more, what's like the Giblet show or whatever you were talking about
Studio
in the
Ghibli.
UK?
Have you heard of, like, Spirited Away?
Yes. Oh my God. I know what Spirit. I had to watch that in language arts. Our teacher was really into stuff. So we watched Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away.
Yeah. So all of the other ones made by Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli are on the UK Netflix.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I know what you're talking about then. Wow. Look at that. I am hip and with the times. Holy cow. Go me. Wow.
Although,
look at that.
They were made a long time ago, so,
I think I watched them in like 8th grade, and I'm 22 now, and they were already like kind of old then, so oof. Those are the only two I know as well. Just Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. God
I haven't
bless.
seen Howl's Moving Castle, but Spirited Away is definitely a little bit of a masterpiece, although watching it in language arts would probably taint my view of it.
Our teacher was so cool, but I went to like a very I grew up in like rural Iowa. I still live in rural Iowa. That's why my Wi-Fi is trash, but I grew up in like small town Iowa. So for our language arts teacher to be like, it was crazy, man. I don't know how she did, but she like got us to like just do a whole thing where we just wrote a comic book for like a straight month and learned like little stuff. She read us Hunger Games. We just watched random videos and stuff. She took us to the University of Iowa and we just had a free day of just walking around looking at comic. Coolest teacher ever. Love her to death. Mrs. Prothero, I think her name. God bless. I had some amazing teachers in Solon, and like those amazing teachers are the ones who like made me fall in love with history as well. Like for how small town and how like many awful memories I have at Solon, there's some great ones in there too.
Yeah. That's essentially my experience with high school and middle school. So
my biggest fear was that I'd peak in high school. I went from like middle school, small town Iowa, to the high school, medium-sized Iowa. So all of a sudden I was just like, I'm taking over. And dude, I was having so much freshman year, didn't do anything. I wore like the same sweatshirt every day, hated it, scared, hid by the bathrooms during lunch, talked to no one. Then sophomore year, I did a play, met this girl who was super popular. Somehow we started dating, and then it just like rose me to popularity. I feel bad because I kind of used her as a stepping stool unknowingly. And then when we broke up, she got really sad and stopped talking to everyone, and I kept talking to everyone. And that part's a little awkward. Sorry. Oh, shout out Michaela. Thank you for your sacrifice. But after that, it was just amazing because, dude, after that, I was like, and then my senior year, I started going into panic mode because I was like, I peaked, and I started dropping out of college twice, and I was like, I peaked, I'm a failure, and then
no.
Yeah, dude, that was it was terrifying. I was like, it's over for me, man. I'm a peaker. I'm gonna live in my parents' basement forever. And there's nothing wrong with living in your parents' basement if you're not. There's the only problem with living in your parents' basement, because by today's standards, the average American doesn't move out of their parents' house till age 24 now. So completely normal. It's only bad if you're not trying to do anything. And by me dropping out of college, my parents were like, you're not doing anything. I was like, oh God. I was working at a Chuck E. Cheese, basically. It was a bad time bears, but you know what? We got there, we got out, and here we are. We're faking it till we make it.
that is the right mentality to go through life with. That is how you make it.
Dude, that's one of my catchphrases. Fake it till you make it, man. That is
Bullshit
the
your
way
through
to
life.
do it. Just fake it till you make it.
Yep. Okay, so I guess moving on, in terms of some other current events.
Man, so
I know
I guess I'm going to wait until this starts loading again. There we go. So, honestly, oh, sorry about that. Are you a fan
it's not
of...
your fault.
Cool.
I know there's some history of the civil rights movement sort of mirroring what happens right about now, with sort of the BLM movement and stuff. Is there any sort of deeper knowledge / insight you have on that?
Very interesting. Very, so personally, it's funny when, I'm not gonna pick a side here. I'm not gonna be like the right is bad or the left is bad, but it's very interesting when a lot of people are like, I support peaceful protest, but what you guys are doing is just awful. Why can't you be like MLK and his peaceful protests? It's like his protests started out peaceful as well, but his protests weren't always 100% peaceful.
Yeah.
He was getting roughed up. People were getting roughed up. They're all getting thrown in jail for that peaceful protest you're talking about, because it usually wasn't the people who started it. Like with MLK, they would nicely walk, and then aggressors, mostly white aggressors, would start a fight. What they would do is they would purposely target whoever looked like they'd be the quickest to anger, and then they would mess with them the most in the protest to start a riot and violence, and the cops would side with the white people and then cause this huge riot, breakup, and everything. So a lot of the MLK protests weren't as peaceful as people today like to say. They're like, you guys were like MLK, and it's like, well, no, because MLK tried it peacefully, and there was times where he himself would get upset and cause more violence than he was meaning to as well. So it's very interesting how a lack of knowledge of history, a lot of people just are like, well, in my textbooks, it's always just pictures of all these people just walking in a line, linking arms. That's some peaceful protesting, and they got yelled at, but they didn't. It's like, no, they didn't just get yelled at.
Yeah.
They had targeted attacks against them, and they were not always peaceful protests. There were incredibly violent protests. There were hospitalizations, loss of lives. It wasn't some kumbaya like a lot of people try to make it sound. They're like, yeah, you guys rioting and protesting, MLK would be ashamed. It's like, don't say that. You don't know.
That started it in those cases, or
sometimes it would be the police, but more times than none, the police would need a well, again, curfew stuff. If they were out past curfew, the police would 100% start it, and that's a mirror of today. But usually, if they're peacefully protesting and marching, and it was a more dangerous part for them, it'd usually be a white aggressor would start it. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't be like, I'm not trying to throw shade or anything, but it wasn't like a white guy would run up and punch a dude. It was more, again, targeted attacks. They would look for the weakest and kind of poke fun and poke the bear and try to get them to break and then make them throw the first punch. So then technically the police are like, you threw the first punch. This whole place is bad. It's all bad. This whole movement's bad. Break it all up. And I think we see a mirror of that today as well.
I've heard in Portland, at least, that this one white guy started rioting and stealing stuff from a store, and this African American comes up to him and is like, stop, this really doesn't reflect well on anyone, it doesn't help anything. And the white guy turns to them and says, doesn't matter, the police will kill you anyways. And I was very struck by that. So I wonder, was it almost similar in the earlier civil rights movement, in terms of opportunists more than anything taking advantage of the situation?
It's awful seeing that happen, but it's definitely something that does happen. There's so many opportunistic people that'll take advantage of any situation. I mean, literally go back in history, and that's how Hitler rose to power, opportunistic. He saw that Germany got screwed over after World War I. They're put into economic ruins because all the countries are like, let's blame Germany. We're going to charge you this amount of money. We're going to put all these restrictions on you so you can't make your money back. You're screwed. And then he comes in and he's like, look, I've got these more socialist beliefs. I got all these ideas that we can fix this country. And for he rose to power in like 1933, 32-ish. And started doing sketch stuff as early as 1935, but no one did anything about it because he seemed like a good guy. He was opportunistic. So you have all these people who are like blending in at first. They go to the nice protest part, the peaceful protest, and then they go later at night and just start destroying things because that's what they wanted to do. They're opportunistic. And you see that throughout history all the time. People will see a weakness in humanity or society and be like, this is my time to strike. And it's really messed up. And like I said, you can see it as big as the rise of Nazi power in Germany, or as small as some emo white boy wanted to break some windows because he wants anarchy. And so he goes to this protest and doesn't even actually care what it means and breaks some windows later.
Yeah, I've seen that at a bunch of protests I've been to. Not the breaking windows, but I was involved in the climate movement in Portland for a bit with this, like...
Oh, nice.
Group that was connected to the mayor's office, but I left about a year later because they just weren't listening to anything I had to say, and it was sort of run by adults, even though it was supposed to be a youth council, which was like, okay, this is really not worth my time anymore. But at some of these
just thinking
protests,
that's... Oh, go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
Oh, that just like reminds me of like some whatever it is of that old guy. I think it's Steve Buscemi, and he's holding the skateboard and he's like, "What's up, fellow kids?" It's just that one old guy who's pretending to be a kid that's just like in charge of all of you.
Yeah. Yep. But at some of these protests, though, there was, like, this one kid who I actually knew because I had gone to school with him for, like, a year back in middle school. But he, like, every protest, and these were big protests for Portland, at least. There was, like, 1, 2, 3,000 people, depending. And he would just start yelling, "Anarchy! Capitalism sucks!" Every single protest.
That's not even what it was about, the environment, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like, anarchy!
It was the weirdest thing.
It's a very interesting thing because it's one of those, like I said, nowadays, again, in a historical context, 10 years ago even, as early as that, you could insult a political belief but still be in that political party. You were much more allowed to insult someone. And then all of a sudden now it seems as though even if it's not as far as the guy who's going to a protest for they're like for the environment and yelling anarchy, they're probably an anarchist. But it's almost now like if you don't agree with me, they're like, if you disagree with me, you're an anarchist, or if you disagree with me, you're a Nazi. If you disagree with me, you're this. It's because we've seen such a rise in anarchists, such a rise in neo-Nazi. It's weird that all these extremist groups have pushed each other so far in hatred that they've all risen. Now the middle is getting so frustrated with it that if you disagree with one thing someone says, even if you're in their same party, they're like, oh, you've betrayed me. You've become this now. You're bad. You're this. And it's just very... it's a little sad to see, honestly. It's a little disheartening, and it's a boil up. We've been seeing it for years. It's kind of...
Sorry, what were you saying? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, dude, you're such a nice host. You're just always so like, you sit there and you're like, I will let him finish. That was like the first time I didn't even really have anything else to say there. So no, man, you're totally good. You're totally good.
I think it comes from peer counseling more than anything. But, I've seen sort of the opposite in Portland where, you'll be called racist for saying that some cops are good. Oh, there you go again. I'm not sure if you heard what I said or you just completely.
You said you saw the opposite, and then what was after that?
Oh, where you can get called, like, a lot of people will call you racist for saying, like, not all cops are bad. Um, that's Portland, but I think just generally, a lot of the country is so close-minded to beliefs that aren't their own to even listen to them. In that it's sort of echo chambers to some degree. It seems like the stratification of rural and urban areas has just increased over time more than anything. So, I tried very hard to start an organization called Common Ground that was just supposed to bring youth together from different walks of life to, like, actually listen to each other. And it went okay, like, it got a 2,000 follower account on Instagram, but, like, honestly, a lot of the time it just attracted extremists who wanted to argue. Um, I don't know, but yeah. Seems like a really deep problem that's hard to solve.
It's one of those things now where people are now standing their ground, and they're willing to die on a hill because they've picked party over policy, in my opinion. I see a lot of people, both sides, they'll be like, I agree with nothing Biden says, but I'm voting for Biden because I'm a Democrat. And there'll be people who are like, I don't agree with almost anything Trump says, but I'm voting for Trump because I'm a Republican and I hate the Democrats more. And it's become a thing now where it's not oh, I really like this guy. And it's not, that one isn't the people's fault. It's the government's fault as a whole. After the war on communism, the American government became disgusting. And don't get me wrong. Here's the thing. Every historical figure ever, not just presidents, every historical figure ever, you can find something bad. I can ruin almost any historical figure with something bad that they've done.
Yep.
And when it comes to presidents, most presidents before World War II, you could find were racist in some sort of way.
Yep.
And a lot of presidents today. But then you've also got presidents after World War II who are war criminals, who are separators. They don't unite the country anymore. And I think it's a large part of the government's fault that has led to a boiling point of the common people. What was once a good, loving American, now, instead of love thy neighbor, hates thy neighbor. A lot of religious people are out here being like, all lives matter, but then saying, if a few old people have to die for me not to wear a mask, I'll let it happen. And it's like, and I don't even think they mean that fully. It's more of, they just feel like they've been pushed to this boiling point of anger. And it's sad to see. I feel like a lot of people have just been, it's hit a boiling point. And it's not just, oh, humans are bad at nature. It's humans want to hate each other. It's when you have, and it's not, and I'm not some like American. I'm a proud American. I'm just not proud of where America's at. But I feel like I would say that with every country I'm at. No country is perfect. Every country is messed up. Like I said, every historical figure ever. No historical figure is perfect. You have to look at it and be like, did they do more good than bad? Well, then they're probably a good person, because everyone does bad things. And that's why cancel culture, and exactly. But it's that just can't exist today. You can't have that belief, really.
It's a very
cancel culture. Oh, I was just saying, cancel culture has ruined that. And cancel culture has moved from celebrities to now historical figures as well. Just everybody's canceled. And the thing is it's just like, buddy, if you guys picked up a textbook and read, you'd realize every single human being on Earth should technically be canceled by the standards you're holding today, which is like, that's fine. That's fine if you have that belief, but you can't cherry pick. You can't be like, I hate this person because of this, but I love this person, because cherry picking is what leads to, again, you picking a party over your own policies.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think our country's become very deontological to some extent. It's all about intent and universal maxims more than it is about the person as a whole. I mean, like, I can think off the top of my head, like, JFK seems so clean, but then you dig deeper, and he had, like, several affairs as president. So, stuff like that, which is just a bit
if he wouldn't have been taken out or assassinated, I think he would not have gone down as like a great president.
Yeah.
All of his scandals probably towards the end of his presidency, all of his scandals would have started coming out. His connections with the mafia, I think Bay of Pigs would have even started getting more attention, because once you cancel somebody, all their more bad stuff. Like when Richard Nixon when Richard Nixon was president, no one was like, oh, he's awful. Honestly, it was a very similar mirror to Trump. A lot of people disliked Nixon, but it wasn't till like a lot of people hated him with a passion. A lot of people loved him with a passion. They're like, I'll die for Nixon. Then once Watergate came out, then they're like, oh, remember when he also didn't really get us out of the Vietnam War? All he did was illegal bombings. Remember when he also did this and this and this? So it's like when one bad thing happens, then it all boils to the top. So with JFK, he had a lot of failed Fidel Castro attacks. I think
some really hilarious ones.
Yeah. I think under JFK alone, it was almost like 400 failed attempts. It was crazy. So all that stuff would start coming to light. But since he got taken out, they're kind of just like, all right, on to Lyndon B. Johnson. So he it's very tragic that he died, but also is like, he might have got out lucky.
Yeah. In terms of legacy, at least, because turns out he did some very messed up things. So, there's that.
Yeah, if you want to jump into some like happier history or anything, that's cool too. I feel bad. I feel like we kind of just got on the political rant, and we were just like, so Tick-Tock, that's pretty cool, but the decline of our country, that's crazy, right? I feel like we kind of got on this sad tangent of politics.
Yeah, if you have any happy politics you want to discuss, or happy, I guess, history. I mean, I know personally there's a lot more that gets done in Congress than most people realize. Our not state senator, but federal senator from the state of Oregon, Ron Wyden, who I was incredibly lucky to be able to intern for last summer, always tells the story about how on the very first day of Congress, right after Trump was elected, out of committee, he and Rand Paul, he's moderate liberal. Rand Paul's the most conservative Republican in all of Congress, basically, passed out of committee a bill to subsidize hearing aids, which doesn't sound like much, but has a really big impact on some people, and over time stuff like that adds up, so a lot more gets done. And same with things in the court. We hear about 1 or 2 cases a year, but that's not the vast majority of what happens. Most are 8-1, 9-0 decisions, and very few are so close that they warrant public scrutiny. But
no, that's what's incredible about just the government as a whole. As an average American, it almost looks like you're like, oh yeah, so they're going to go vote right now on impeaching the president, then they're just going to go home and do nothing for the next few months. It's like, no, granted, I think they are a little overpaid. They do a lot that you just don't, it's not the media. And again, this isn't crapping on the media. It's not worth it to the media to be like, today a bill was passed. And we just don't see it because we're so, and it's not like, oh, Americans are bad for not knowing this. It's like, I don't think very many British people, you'd go to them and be like, so what's happening in Parliament? Unless it's something huge, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's just something where it's overlooked. Another thing is how much states can decide their own stuff. State-wise, when Trump became president, so many people are like, he's going to ruin our state. And it's like, well, actually, your state has a lot more power than a lot. Yeah, it's crazy. States' rights are still incredibly strong to this day. You're seeing it with the legalization of marijuana. They can't just be like, whole country's legal now. It has to be state by state because of how powerful states' rights are still today.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing about it is, I think it's not technically that they legalize it. It's more that they just say, don't enforce the law, and now we're going to tax you. Because federally, it's still illegal, so they can say to the police, don't enforce this law. If you do, we'll enforce that you're fired now.
It's one of those interesting things where I think it's going to be very similar to gay marriage, where if we just continue to see more states start to lean that way, federally, they'll just be like, you know what, let's make it just federally legal, because and that's when, again, you're gonna have people who are like, that's an invasion of our privacy, states' rights. It's like, yeah, but it's also one of those things where it doesn't really directly affect you. It's just weed, bro. Don't smoke it. It's not one of those things where it'll destroy you if someone else is enjoying the devil's lettuce.
Unlike alcohol to some extent, which is the really ironic thing.
It's funny story. I live in Iowa, meaning Senator Joni Ernst is our representative. She used to be an alcoholic. She has 2 DUIs and actually struck a man, I believe, while driving drunk. And she actually was like, I know the problems of addiction, and that's why I'll never legalize marijuana. But then she also just legalized carry-out drinks, like alcoholic beverages. Now you can take a cup outside into the streets, which I fully, like, honestly, that's cool. That's helping the bars. I support that. Like, I'm not like, no drinking outside. Do it. But the fact that she went from, I know what addiction's like because I was addicted to alcohol, so no marijuana, but here's more alcohol. I was like, bro, come on. You're not even defending your own point anymore. You don't even care.
Yeah.
So.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. And you wonder why people hate politics sometimes. Oh, there we go.
It's
and you
just
wonder
so,
why people hate politics. Yeah,
it's just so it's so biased. It's so stupid and so biased. And I think that's where we should leave it on politics. So if you want to move into anything else, let's as we start to like wind down, I feel like we kind of hit the peak with politics, and we've kind of just been on this rant. I appreciate that you didn't like fully take a side as well. I always feel again, I work as a radio host on like a mainstream radio station, so you can't really give your political view. You can't. You're a personality. No one cares what I have to go by JT because Truemper sounds like I support a political candidate. It's just my last name.
Yeah.
So I have to be JT, and no one cares what JT, who says stupid jokes on the radio. No one cares what I think politically. They're like, bro, you were just talking about Shia LaBeouf getting tattoos on his pecs and stomach for a movie. I do not give a crap who you're voting for as president. So it's one of those things where I've kind of taken that mindset. It was like, I personally should never. My personal Facebook, oh yeah, I get in fights with family members all the time. But on any other social media, I'm never going to say you're wrong, you're right. And honestly, if you go way back on my timeline, you could probably find my opinions. But like, I made a point. I was like, starting today, like a few months ago, I was like, done. No more political stuff on my main social medias.
I mean, if I really, really disagree with something that I just think is important, like someone makes an anti-Semitic comment, or people are racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever, I'll like sort of put my foot down on that, but I'll also be like, but like, if you don't understand what it means, talk to me about it. I'm not gonna like just shame you for saying a word necessarily. But you know, other than that, it's not like, I feel like I have some responsibility to speak up.
No, I totally agree. And the thing for me is when it comes to like homophobia or like the hatred of marijuana or anti-Semitic stuff, that's not even like political to me. That's just like, no, if you have those beliefs, I don't want you as a follower. If you're like, gay marriage is a sin, but I'm fine with it happening, I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. Your religion. But if you're like, gay marriage is a sin and I hate you, and if you have hatred in your heart, I just don't want you. I just don't want you as a follower or supporter. So I don't see that as political. It's more of the fact of like, I'm never going to be like, blah, blah, blah is an awful candidate and I think they should die. Like, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna stay out of that. I've got a very purple following, so I just don't ever want to like try, and they're younger viewers probably. I don't ever want to try to force my political belief, or I don't want someone to be like, I like you more or like you less because of your political belief. It's like, there's the basic human beliefs and human rights that I will support, but past that, I just don't want to be like, get nitpicky with it. It's like, I support small governments, but I also support basic human rights. I support that. Obviously, those aren't mutually exclusive. You can support small government and basic human rights. It's just one of those things where it's like, I'll tell people what I support, and it's a very purple belief. It just then goes into my own moral beliefs, which I'll never be like, morally, I think blah, blah, blah is better. Because that's just, it's not my place. It's just not my place to be like, you're morally wrong. So when it comes to like politics, but not human rights. But yeah, so I try not to get political, but the political science in me, I'm always like, I want to argue so bad. So then I just
the
go to my
debater
personal
in me.
Facebook.
I did speech and debate in high school for 4 years, so, I'll say one last thing about politics, I guess, and then you're right, we should get off this subject and talk about happy stuff, because there's always good to be found. But I guess the bigger problem for me is not with social media, but when school gets into it, public school, because my school was very liberal to an extent where, like, teachers would take sides, like, all the time, and just basically force political beliefs sort of down our throats. And even the school overall would take sides. When there was that like stand outside for 14 minutes of silence, they made that an assembly and then basically only let liberal speakers talk. I wasn't sure if you could hear it because it froze for a second.
No, I got you. Just and again, I think any school or any organization that you're in, if it's so again, we look up to teachers, and a lot of teachers influenced me. I remember as a kid, I asked one of my teachers, like, "Who are you voting for?" And they're like, "I shouldn't tell you that. It's just not right." And now, as I'm an older person, I'm like, "Wow, that's good," because they could have teachers should shape your minds, but they shouldn't be like forcing their beliefs down your throat. In my opinion, I understand that might be like a little bit of a privileged opinion. I'm totally aware. I don't know. I feel like if you surround yourself with too much of the same view, you start getting a little brainwashed with anything, either side, and that's how you start becoming the far extremist of one side.
Yep. Okay, so happy history. Tell us some stories about happy history.
So Ivan the Terrible killed his son by hitting him in the head in a fit of anger. So that happened one time. That's pretty cool. I don't know. I can't think of anything happy now. I could do this. The
one
dude,
general who was the soldier's general. The guy during World War I and II who thought he was a terrible general or something, and then
Omar Bradley.
Yes.
Good old Omar Bradley. What a great. So many people were like, he wasn't a great general. It's like, well, he wasn't the best general, but he was a good general. He genuinely cared about his men. He literally was the soldier's general. He was such a great guy. Omar Bradley. There's a reason he's still like well revered. If you look him up, people loved him because he was genuinely a great person. And Omar Bradley, shout out. You know what? Obviously he has his faults. He can go and like find something bad, but overall he did do a lot of good, and he was the soldier's general. Omar Bradley, pretty cool. I'll tell another story about the Secret Service and how they came to power.
Okay.
So the Secret Service has been around for quite some time, but they're kind of just, they're there. But after Abraham Lincoln died, So after Abraham Lincoln died, though, this was their big moment because this guy wanted to steal, I think his name was like Big Jim or something. He wanted to steal Abraham Lincoln's body to get, to ransom it and get one of his friends released from jail so they can make more counterfeit money.
I think Steve Shankins wrote a book about this. If you know who Steve Shankins is.
No, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
He wrote Bomb.
I don't know if I know that one. What's that one about?
It's about the atomic bomb, but he tells it in like a very comical way that also gets into the science and the history and other things. So.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. That sounds like exactly right. Because I think we're thinking of the same guy because it's kind of comedic on how it went. Because literally, they just got lucky. One of their Secret Service agents overheard the plot, joined in on it, told everyone to like follow them. Secret Service is hiding in the graveyard. A guy got so excited that they're gonna do something cool, he accidentally fired his gun. The dudes escaped, went back to the bar that they literally came up with the plan, and then got arrested. And then the Secret Service, I don't know why they returned there, but that's what made it the Secret Service. That's what put the Secret Service's mark in history, was them arresting these guys.
Yeah, stuff be funny sometimes.
It's awesome. One thing about history is I'm gonna go on a little tangent if that's cool, real quick.
No, go on tangent away.
Okay. So I've been known to kind of crap on schools' teaching of history, and I got to be honest, that's not fair to schools. They have so much to teach, right? It's not fair for me to be like, they don't teach enough history, because they do. They teach as much as they can. But like in comparison to math teaches you the most extreme version of everything and drill it into your brain, and then you forget it a few years later. Like I haven't used anything past division since like my first day of college, so and then I dropped out anyways, so I haven't used it in quite some time. It's something where, compared to history though, it's almost like if every moment in history was a book, history classes in high school are only showing you the cover of the book. You don't even get a chance to open it. Basically, they're like, if like World War II was something, it'd be like the Harry Potter series. They'd be like, here's Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. You're like, oh, Deathly Hallows, this one's probably more extreme. Oh, Sorcerer's Stone, there's magic involved. You get the most basic understanding and like gist of it, right? When you look at the cover of a book. And I feel like that's all history classes in high schools do for you. But then you get like a book like Of Mice of Men or Slaughterhouse-Five, and you kind of just have to guess. And I feel like that's a large part of it when it's like, when it comes like the Civil War, you're just kind of they're like, Paul Revere rode his horse and yelled, the British are coming. One, he never yelled, the British are coming. Two, there was a lady who also did the exact same thing, but rode twice as long and did twice as much of the work he did.
Sexism.
But again, it's just his. Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things as well where people are like, oh my God, they only teach us this stuff because of sexism, racism, and all this. And I think that does play a part in who gets remembered. But
Yeah.
I don't think the schools today are that. I just think the schools today are like, oh crap, you know what? This is what it is. We're only going to teach this. I don't have time to go into this 10-minute tangent about this side person who did something awesome. People know Paul Revere. People know this, they know this. So after high school, I highly encourage that if you have a favorite time period, open that book, look past that cover and read into it and learn, because that's what I had to start doing, because I fell in love with it. And then you just look into one thing and it's like Lewis and Clark. What do you know about? You seem like someone who knows more about history, so you'll probably know a lot more. But like when I say Lewis and Clark, what are like the two things that come to mind?
I mean, okay, so I know a bit more about this purely because there's a college like 3 miles away from me called Lewis and Clark that I went to debate camp for 2 years. But yeah, I mean, I know like they came to the Columbia, sort of found this coast, you know. They brought a dog with them. They had some slaves. They brought Sacagawea. You know, they were, I think it was by, God, I'm trying to remember what president. It might have been, I think it was somewhere around the first Roosevelt that sent them, but I don't completely remember. Because I think I watched a documentary at some point about it, but yeah.
Sorry, I froze there. I'll be honest.
You froze.
Sorry about that. I'll be honest. You know more than most people, but like when I went in high school, all I knew was like just the basic stuff. I was like, they went there, Sacagawea. I didn't even know like the reason they met with Sacagawea and talked with that tribe was because of a French trader who was there. And the French trader was like, yeah, we should work with them. Or like the fact that like Clark killed himself after the thing, or they don't even know. He just had 2 gunshots in his head. So they're like, either killed himself or he was like shot and robbed, and he thought he was a disgrace, and how Clark also was in love with Lewis. You could see it in his journal writings, how lonely he was. It's just all this weird, interesting stuff that it's not the high school's fault that they don't teach it. Like, I give high schools so much crap for that they don't teach it, but it's not their responsibility to, because, like, who has time to get into all of that? You know, like, a kid's mind is so finite at that time. You can't be like, here's this and also 50 other things. You just have to tell it, like, bam, 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 and then
I think
it's done.
I think to some extent that's a case of like alternate causality. It's like chicken and the egg. I think to some degree that the reason a high schooler's mind is so finite is because we treat it as such. You know, if we taught it in a more interesting way that was more of a story, you know, it's called history, right? It's a story for a reason. It is that book. It's not just the front cover. It's supposed to be told to some degree with more nuances. And yes, history is written by the winners and sort of the powerful in history, but I think to some degree it's not just that they don't have enough time to teach it, it's that what they teach and how they teach it isn't the right stuff or told in a way that's engaging. You know,
I completely agree.
I think also the reason I liked elementary more than middle school or high school is not because of the content, but because it's one teacher, so they can teach it so much more in an interconnected way. So my fifth grade teacher, he was one of the best teachers I've ever had. We would go into math, and then he'd sort of go on this tangent about who this mathematician was, like what part of history he was from, sort of how this applied to science, and like all these other things that you just don't get in high school because it's all very like segmented into a bunch of subjects. But I think there is a way to tell it in a much more engaging way, and I think to some degree like that sort of mindset that it is finite makes it finite, like makes the high schooler's mind finite to some degree. And I guess I'm talking from a perspective that's mine, and I get that I'm very different from your average high schooler, but at the same time I have seen teachers who are much more engaging. For example, my teacher who taught AP psychology, AP gov, and philosophy, and he was much more engaging, and everyone wanted to take his class because he knew how to teach. He treated students basically as equals. You know, he would like sort of stand atop when he needed to, but like he understood students. He'd let us like basically skip class if we wanted to with no penalty, like if we needed to. Um, and everyone wanted to have him a teacher because he knew what he was doing, and we learned way more in that class. So yeah, I guess like some credits due, but at the same time, I think I've seen better ways to teach it.
Oh yeah. It's two parts. It's the teacher and just the fact of like this syllabus. And like I said, I had some amazing teachers as well. But then you've got some other teachers who I feel like they've just been beat down by the school system, and they don't love what they do anymore, which is, it's sad to see. And again, not their fault entirely, but again, there is a problem with the school system as a whole when it comes to multiple different aspects of learning. But for me, I always crap on it because history. And again, I always think it's interesting, like you said, it's written by the victor, but if you read farther into it, you usually can see the losers, like why they did it, some more justification for the losers, which I always find interesting. I always kind of appreciated that. If you do read, if you find, my biggest takeaway is, if you find a part of history genuinely interesting, become an expert in that part. Learn as much as you can about it, so then you're very knowledgeable in that. You don't have to be a jack of all trades with all history. You don't have to know everything. So if you pick a certain part, find what you love with that, and just generally learn about that, because most parts of history have repeated each other so many times at this point, you're probably already finding it repeating something else, and it can help you today. And that's something I need to work on, is I need to stop spreading myself thin with all history, and I need to pick something I genuinely love and just learn as much as I can about it.
I guess there's sort of two things off of that. One is, this is what I forgot to say earlier. You made a video about Napoleon being short. In fact, he wasn't short. That's like just a complete lie that was told to make him look weak. So I just remembered that.
Did you see the video that I made where I said
Yeah.
he wasn't short? Or
no, I saw the one where you were like walking up the stairs with like the short.
Oh, yes, with the wide Putin. It's funny, one of my first history videos was me talking about how technically Napoleon was 5'7", which 5'6" or 5'7", which is the average height, which was almost above average height back then. But British propaganda wanted to make him look weak and small, so they're like, let's just paint him as a small dude. Yep. And then that just stuck, and it's like cartoons, everything started doing that. Clearly I'm guilty of it because I thought it was funny, because I was like, oh, why'd Putin it? Because that's just the meme. And so people are just like, oh yeah, the short guy. And it's like, actually, dude was like 5'6" or 5'7". Yeah. He was well over average height.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, I think it's not just that teachers are beaten down, but genuinely some have lack of knowledge. So this teacher had a lot more problems beyond this that I've talked about on my TikTok. I don't think it's necessarily pertinent to get into here, but this was in 6th grade. She taught ancient world history and language arts, and at like the student parent day at like the beginning of the year, a parent asked, so are you going to talk about the connections between history and what's happening now? And she goes, no, I don't think there's really any connection at all. So, you know, I think some genuinely seem to lack the knowledge of how to teach it correctly.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that, especially it goes kind of back to the school system as a whole. It's a very hard thing to stand on when it comes to especially school reform. It's like, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to that. But no, I definitely agree with that as well. So I guess the takeaway from that is cherish and love your amazing teachers. The amazing ones you have, show them the love and appreciation they deserve.
Yes, that is definitely true. Do you have any, I guess, parting thoughts or sort of parting history stories? Because I don't want to take up too much of your time.
No, I appreciate that, man. Let's see here. A favorite. I don't even know if I have a favorite history story. Oh no. Let's think here. Let's all just take a deep breath. We're thinking, we're processing. Okay, we're getting there. You know, okay. I think I've got it. Okay.
Okay.
The Statue of Liberty, the conception of the Statue of Liberty, right? France wanted to give America a gift. When he first made the Statue of Liberty, like he made like a mock of it, he showed it to America and he's like, hey, I'm giving this to you. Can you pay me a little bit just for like the travel fees and I'll give it to you. Like, I just want to give you a gift. America's like, no, we're good. No, thanks. We don't want it. And he was like, wait, no, it's a gift. Like, I'm giving it to you. They're like, don't give it. We're not taking it. And he was like, oh my. And he was so enraged, he actually made the arm to show how big it is and how grand it would be. And he's like, look, it's super cool. Take it. And they're like, no, we actually still don't want it. We don't even know. We have nowhere we would put it. So then the creator and France as a whole started looking into where they could put it. They found an island that it would work. They went and talked with the American government. They're like, just take our gift. Take it. And finally, the American government was like, I guess. And then it got built, and the American government was like, holy cow, this is cool. We're going to rewrite it like we actually absolutely loved it from the get-go. We love France. Thank you, France. I love the Statue of Liberty. And that's how we got the Statue of Liberty. We didn't even want it the first 2 times. And then finally we saw how cool it was. It's just so funny how, like, America's always been interesting. We're always just like, whatever. And then once something does go our way, we're like, all right, now capitalize on it. Now talk about it. Which, it's just it's so interesting and so fun. There's so many just fun, interesting history stuff. One of my biggest recommendations, if you're ever bored and want to learn about history, like a brief history, Drunk History is very good. That's how I started in middle school, falling in love with history. Drunk History does a very good job.
It's really good. The other series I like is Mental Floss. They have a book called Mental Floss History of the United States. I think they have Mental Floss History of the World, which almost, now that I think of it, is very Bill Wurtzian in its affect to some extent, because it's very quick, very short, but it also tells it as more of a story than anything, which I like. Also, Bill Wurtz.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I totally agree. So, yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. I don't even... Did I follow you? Did we follow each other before you became the Stitch guy? Before you had that name? Or
I think, okay, technically I had the Stitch guy, but spelled wrong. Because you commented on a video that I, was like, I will stitch you if you put it in the comments. And then I got, 200 comments, and I was like, well, shit. And then I stitched you, and then I think you started following me. Or you might have followed me after that video, and I just didn't realize it. And then I saw your page and was like, oh shit, this is some good history content, and now I'm gonna nerd out.
I think it was after you made the Stitch, I was like, yeah, I got this. I'll follow this guy, and then that's how okay, that's what I thought. But yeah, no, man, I really appreciate you having me on. Hopefully you do get, a podcast started up or something like that.
Yes.
Podcasts are fun. A lot of work, but other than that, man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here.